Our next guest is a pioneering electric violist who has performed with everyone from Elton John to David Bowie. She's actually going to play a little something for us today. Please welcome Martha Mooke to the South by Southwest EDU studio. I am so looking forward to this.
Me too.
Take it away.
A little improv.
Yay, my own private concert. That was great.
And you'll never hear the same thing again.
You're an improviser.
That's
an
right.
improviser.
Yes.
Okay. So you've performed with so many musicians, but you're here at South by Southwest EDU to talk about your collaborations with David Bowie, Be Still My Heart. How did you come by that? How did that start?
It's a great story, and I couldn't have made it up if I tried to. I had been working with Tony Visconti, David's longtime producer, doing string sessions, contracting string sessions, string quartet. And because I had met Tony, but I used to play with a lot of different ensembles. And I was always doing classical plus different styles of music. And I created a showcase series for ASCAP, American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, because I didn't feel like there was a place for me in the organization. And so when that happens, and it happens many times throughout my career, that I don't see the pathway forward for what I feel is my true voice, I create it and make it happen. So I presented an idea that I called THRU THE WALLS, and it was to showcase composers who were also performers, that were doing their music that defied categorization. So it could be somebody like me that learned classical viola, but then was also plugging in because I heard Jean-Luc Ponty play, or I heard the Velvet Underground or Laurie Anderson, or any of those, and I wanted to incorporate all those sounds. And I thought, I'm always thinking about cross-pollination of audiences and growing audiences, and the way to do that is to make people ask, what is that all about? I don't understand how these things connect, which was also part of the session earlier. On igniting the imagination, it's how do you get things that you wouldn't think made sense together, and then they form something totally new that you would not have imagined could happen. So I created THRU THE WALLS, and I invited Tony Visconti to be the host. So I thought, okay, a legendary rock and roll producer introducing a sort of classical music showcase, new music showcase in a club. It was at the Cutting Room in New York City. And usually it's like a nightclub or a music venue, jazz, etc. And so we had people from the classical music world, we had people from the rock and roll world. I think Fred Schneider from the B-52s came in, he was interested. And people were just curious, what was it going to be? And earlier that day I was talking with Tony, and he said, well, I told my friend David about it because, it sounds like something really interesting that he would be interested in. I'm like, okay, that's nice.
David who?
And so we're doing the sound check and getting ready, and the lights go down. Tony's about to go up on stage, and they escort David Bowie over to my table. And he sits right in front of me. And that's how I met David Bowie. And then the show started. Tony got up and did his intro, and I think David made some side comments. There were 3 sets. I played my set. David left after my set 'cause he had an early interview the next day. And then a few days later, I got a call from Tony, and he said David would like to know if you could put a string quartet together to play with him at Carnegie Hall for the Tibet House benefit concert that Philip Glass produces.
Okay, you're telling the story very nonchalantly, but what was the inside of you feeling when they sat David Bowie in front of you? Are you just that cool?
It was surreal. And well, he was not, I mean, he was in street clothes, you know, and kind of unshaven. It was still very surreal, and you know, people were kind of buzzing around. When it really hit me that, I mean, then we did some rehearsals with him for the show. It really hit me when David came backstage at Carnegie Hall in full, you know, with his makeup and just this gorgeous long jacket, and I'm like, oh my God, it's David Bowie. Like,
it's for reals now.
Yes. And then to be on stage with him, I mean, we played Heroes, and you know, it's just still, I still feel that glow inside of me, and that's something that I try to translate to students, to audiences, that kind of vibrant energy and interactivity.
So how did he influence your art?
Just, I mean, by being such a brilliant creative genius, you know, you just have to sort of sit back and you see what he's done throughout his entire career, totally recreating himself. I mean, he had different reasons for doing what he did, but it was to give himself a viable path forward. And
you have that in common.
I think so. I think so. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from David, and he did talk about the cut-up technique and the verbicizer of you know, cutting up newspapers and putting words and sentences together that wouldn't have made sense otherwise, but that sparked something in the imagination to go maybe in a different direction that your brain would not have ordinarily put it in.
Will you describe David Bowie as an artist in search of unconscious intelligence?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, that is, I think we all have a creative voice inside of us, and I think some of us just think too much about how do I draw something, how do I play something, and not so much of organic creativity, and that is what he was proposing with the cut-up technique, with basically everything, his approach to creating, whether it was music, whether it was art, was just to see where it went and not have expectations. And although he also made a comment in one of the videos that I showed about being careful not to overdo something.
Do you use the cut-up technique too?
I use it in different ways. I use it in a musical way where it's just my process is to try different sounds, just like I did before. I really didn't know where it was going. Sometimes it ends up becoming an actual composition, and sometimes it's just kind of daydreaming. And daydreaming is also a form of creative fertilization, I guess, in a way, when you give your mind space and let it kind of find its way. So just observing the different decades and the different eras of David, and working with him in the studio, and being in that world of feeding off of that creativity.
You guys are great collaborators. What do you think are the keys to the best collaborations?
Well, the main word actually is collaborations. I don't think there is a right way or a wrong way. I think the best thing to do is to leave yourself open to collaborating with people that you never would have imagined you could actually create something with. Like, I have a collaboration, ongoing collaboration now with Razel, beatboxer, because we happen to be sharing the same stage, and we're like, you want to improvise, you want to do something together, and we've been working together ever since. We create, we write together, we perform together, and who would have, ever thought that that could really come out and be some kind of a successful collaboration. So
when you collaborate with other artists, it seems like you guys you have like a language together. You're communicating back and forth. Is that something that's learned, or is that something that's innate?
It's communication, and it's a language that gets made up every time you have a new collaboration. It's like we played David's Warszawa, and he created a brand new language just to represent people that were looking to be free, and that was rather than quote any other language. And I think that's the key, is you figure out how to communicate, and whether it's musically, you speak the same language, classical, jazz, or whatever, or you find a new language through that. And that's where my process is always looking, always evolving for the new.
I find when I go to a museum, it inspires me in a way that I can go home and do better sculptures. I mean, what other works of art or literature inspire you to make music or shape your creativity?
I think just knowing that there's so much out there that I don't know about, and whenever I have the opportunity to explore something new or go, I haven't gone to museums too much lately just because there's no time. But you can be inspired. I'm inspired just by this piece of.
That bowl's gorgeous.
Yes, absolutely. I could write a whole piece of music based on that, and so it doesn't have to be something that is intended to spark your creativity, because who said cutting up words is supposed to spark creativity? What does that mean? Or Brian Eno's oblique strategies, a deck of cards with these very strange sayings on them, which is meant to shake you up and get you out of your regular state of how you would do things, because that's how evolution happens. That's how new things happen.
How do artists use the cut-up method, other musicians and artists?
It's used by literary artists. They used it in I think William Burroughs used it, and Brian Garson. But each one is different. Basically, it's taking something that made sense on its own, and carving it up, and throwing it up into the air, or putting it together. I have an honors class that I teach at New Jersey City University, and that was the hardest thing for them to do, was to practice do something in the cut-up technique. Because I told them, cut up this poem, I think it was a Robert Frost poem, mm-hmm. Cut it up, and just put it together without trying to make sense. And it was really hard for them to try to put these words together without have them making sense.
So as a teacher, is that how you unlock their creativity? You just kind of force them to get out of their headspace?
In a way, yeah. I encourage them. Don't force anything. I let them think that figure out how to do it on their own. That they're maybe they're cautious, maybe afraid. It is the unknown, and it's not how they've been taught to think. Mm-hmm.
Do you have tricks or methods to help them feel more comfortable with that?
Oh, I do, yeah. And I always start by saying the classroom is a safe space, and that what we do here is respected by everybody in the room. I'm the first one that makes crazy sounds, so they know that I mean what I say.
Like what? What do you mean, crazy sounds?
Oh, gosh. So I did a workshop once, and it was like a 6th grade orchestra. And I went over and I went over and I said, okay, answer me when I play. And I just went like, and the kid literally was looking around first to see if his teacher was watching.
He's like, wait, what?
And
I can do that?
Literally said, am I allowed to do that?
Yes.
And so that's what I started calling that workshop. Am I allowed to do that?
Ah, brilliant.
It's like, yes, you are. Maybe not all the time, but you know that that is something you have access to. So do it, after school. Do it with your friends. Experiment. Make your own language. The word improvisation is very scary to a lot of people. And I often say that the fastest way to get a classical musician to stop playing is tell them to improvise.
It's hard for us to see failure as an option, that you have to be so perfect.
And that's when the best things happen.
Yes.
I mean, I'm so good at failing and making mistakes, it's ridiculous. And so, but it's something that I've learned, and I've become comfortable with it. If I'm on stage and one of my pedals something happens or something cuts out, I've learned to accept that as a challenge and accept that as a possibility of going forward in another direction that I would not have normally thought of.
And there's the wisdom. What pieces of art, music, literature would you recommend to students to expand their horizons?
Oh, there's so much out there that
I know.
I don't even know, and I'm constantly learning from my students what is out there. So I have to say, just keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, enter into conversations. I know it's hard for people that are shy. I'm a shy person, but I've learned to that's the key, is to have conversations and learn what somebody else knows, and sort of take that and move forward, and on your own time then delve into it. And now, 30 years ago we didn't have the internet, we didn't have Google, and now it's just so easy. Somebody says a name and you Google that and you say, oh yeah, I know where to find that, I know how to discover more about that. So
my favorite and best teachers have always been the ones that learn from their students. I feel like there's definitely a wisdom in that engagement, and it makes the best lessons, and it makes an endearing connection that makes you want to learn.
Yes, I think it's important to always know that we're always evolving, and that's how I feel. And I don't have an ego about saying, oh, I didn't know how to do that, or I didn't know that. Please show me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that is something that I would heartily recommend for more people, students, to keep that part of it. When we were little, we tried everything, right? When we were kindergartners, we would, got our hands into everything, ate dirt, the whole thing. And as we grew up and went to school, and teachers are saying, no, you can't do that, or parents are saying, no, you can't do that, don't do that. It's blah, blah. And so we're hearing all these no's and all these boundaries that are being created, that if we understand that they can move, they can move. And let's get back to what we thought when we made up all these things when we were little. Let's keep the imagination flowing. It's evolving, and now we have more experience to work with it.
So speaking of being free and talking about being a child, you wore some pretty fantastical costumes when you performed with the New York Theater Ballet while you were playing your viola. That must have been so exciting. Can you tell me about it?
That was yes. That was, so I've collaborated with dancers before. I love working with dancers with other medium. And for a while, I was actually a member of the Dance Theater of Harlem Orchestra, which is very different than composing your own and performing in a different capacity. So for the New York Theater Ballet, it was an amazing collaboration. With the choreographers, that Bridgman and Packer in there, and because they do in visuals and choreography what I do with my music and my instrument, and
Which is what makes you clearly an artist in every form of the word.
Well, thank you. I think that's I fed off of them, they fed off of me, the dancers fed off of of the whole thing. I basically wore white, and they projected these amazing images on me. So I was the screen in that way. So I love collaborations, and I'm looking forward to many more.
Would you collaborate with my Out Here? Can you play something for the next, 30 seconds or so? I would love it. I'm just using this so I can hear more.
Well, you can't put the monitors in front, so.
Well, you can go squeaky if you want. Martha, thanks for the incredible music and for making us stop by the studio today.
Southwest EDU, it's been a pleasure, and keep evolving, everybody.
You can check out our daily schedule of interviews on our website at schedule.sxswedu.com. And you can also watch all of our studio interviews on the South by Southwest EDU TV app and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SXSWEDU. I'm your host, Kari Byron, and I'm going to let Martha play us out for the break. Thank you for tuning in.